Pearl of Africa. This is the name Sir Winston Churchill gave to Uganda when he visited the small East African country at the turn of the 19th century. A land of beauty with magnificent tropical rainforest cover and good climate. She shares common borders with Kenya to the east, Sudan to the north, Rwanda and Tanzania to the south, and the Democratic Republic of Congo to the west. A precious commodity, a rare resource to some, plentiful to others. Uganda has plenty of it. Uganda has about 15% of her land area covered by surface water in form of lakes, rivers and swamps. Forests and other forms of vegetation are crucial factors in the conservation and regulation of the flow of rain. Over 100 years ago, almost half of Uganda was covered with thick forests. This forest cover consisted of two tropical belts, one running from the eastern highlands on the shores of Lake Victoria, the Lake Crescent. Another belt linked the southwestern corner of Uganda through the Rwenzori mountain slopes up to Budongo. But these rainforests have been reduced to little portions of some 3 million hectares. This is a result of heavy wood exploitation, land shortage and subsistence agriculture. Till recently, the two steady rainfall seasons, the forests and other forms of vegetation were able to sustain water balance and support good soils. Today, things seem to be changing. The rainfall pattern is increasingly erratic and unreliable, characterized by a series of drought and floods. The result? Food insecurity and compromised livelihoods.
Agriculture in Uganda is largely rain-fed, and therefore, if you get out forests, then your weather patterns begin to change, more or less like what we are seeing, across Africa. The weather patterns begins to change. You cannot predict with certainty when it will rain and when it will shine, and so the agriculture really suffers.
The rapid change in population, with a population of close to 30 million people, largely rural peasants, and growing at a rate of 3%, the pressure is on. The vulnerable areas are the most populated and remote places where people are trying to survive. They hardly think of the environment.
And if this is the rate at which our forests are going to go, I'm worried that we cannot really achieve sustainable development in Uganda.
And as population increases, agricultural land need increases. The forest is disappearing very fast, especially in the Buganda, Mubende and Mityana districts, where the forest disappearance is very, very disturbing.
Like in any other encroached areas, this cultivation has been unproductive. The soils are quickly exhausted. The Matiri and Chegegwa forest reserves in Kihura sub-county, Chenjeru district, is a good example. The overpopulation and overcultivation, mainly by the landless migrating rural peasants, limits production to only 2 years.
If you drive along the road from Mityana up to Fort Portal, you go through this Chenjeru district. What is going on is unacceptable. The whole ecosystem is being completely decimated, transformed. And I wish government came up with some regulations, some laws that recognize the rights of the landowner to own the land, but also require him to keep certain percentage of the forest estate on that land so that we do not lose the vital functions of forest cover in this country.
Forests in the initial stages of conversion are fertile, but gradually as the growing of crops and continues, there is a problem that they lose their fertility. What we are seeing here may be a profitable venture in the short term, but in the long term, it will be a liability to the owner.
This big tree has for many years survived the wrath of the Ho and the Panga. Her protection emerges from the deeply seated spiritual beliefs and traditions. People flock here to have a glimpse of the magic tree, Nakaima.
Nsaba okuweebwa, nsaba abaana bange basome bulungi bayite bafune amadiguli gaabwe, nsaba luzaale. Wetlands are for you and I. We should learn to live with them. We should stop destroying them. They are good for you and I. They are good for you and I. Wetlands. They are good for you and I. They are good for you and I. Because they are good for you and I. Wetlands. They are good for you and I. They are good for you and I. They are good for you and I.
A commitment in sustaining the whole ecosystem. The action seeks, among other measures, to conserve catchment areas to feed forest rivers and swamps. Till recently, Uganda's swamps were neglected. The country's 13% wetlands coverage is rapidly getting more and more devastated. The combined effect of increasing population and subsistence agriculture is persistent food shortage and increasing demand for more arable land. The traditional land tenure systems did not emphasize effective land use. Under the customary land tenure, the owner regulates the use. The owner has absolute rights to the land. Its development is not certain. This has resulted in poor peasants invading marginal lands like wetlands. This Nachivabo swamp is a clear example.
Everybody is guilty of wetland reclamation. The poor normally go to the wetlands because they cannot afford a more expensive dry land. The Chinawataka Namuongo area wetland was invaded after the project to upgrade the Namuongo slums faltered, where instead of those poor people who owned plots were supposed to be assisted to improve the houses and stay there, they sold the plots and they had nowhere to go. They descended into the wetland.
The Nachivabo wetlands has for some time served as a major natural filter for sewerage and other domestic and industrial effluents. It has today been reduced to few swampy patches, jeopardizing the wetland's ability to perform her role. The result? Compromised water quality flowing into the lake from Murchison Bay.
Algae. In my local language you call it enkongi. Yeah. It's that green substance, and whenever you see it over a water body, that shows you that actually the lake is fertilized as a result of nutrients. It's an indicator of the pollution, level of pollution of the water body.
Remember, this area is flanked by Kampala city, and there are lots and lots of activities, including poor management of septic tanks, including poor management of human feces, plus all oozing of pollutants from garbage, and all these are poured into Nachivabo channel that ends up in Murchison Bay, and the poor papyrus swamp, which has been decimated to almost nothing, which are very good at extracting these pollutants and releasing water that is a little bit clearer. The poor swamp has been decimated, has been uprooted.
We have a problem. I've just told you about voters, the people who are destroying the environment. There's a reluctance on part of government to prosecute them, to rein them within the law.
Wetlands also play a major role in flood control. Working as sponges, they sip in excess water during the wet season and release it gently into the atmosphere. But in the early 1970s, when wetlands were still seen as wasteland, the Kampala City Council gazetted the Kaboja, Nalukolongo and Luzira Portbell wetlands as industrial parks. Today, the would-be flood controllers in Nalukolongo are characterized by numerous maize mill factories, illegal solid waste dumping sites, domestic settlements, and now education and religious infrastructures.
N'abantu abazimbye okumpi n'omwala omwala guno bagweyambisa nga dustbin bagusuulamu ebisaaniko kati enkuba bw'etonnya ne bayiwa kati oyinza okwewuunya okukeba obwo gye buva nga buva mu bantu ababusaasanya.
This is a gazetted area as an industrial park by the Kampala City Council, and one questions as to why an authority like Kampala City Council can gazette a wetland area when the National Environmental Management Authority and the Wetlands Inspection Division have rules and laws that prevent encroachment on wetlands. So you can see the contradiction of the development process in our country.
If you fail to build, to put your factory in the swamp, during that time before Environment Act came into place, then it is too late. Even if it is planned as an industrial area, if you can build an industry without uprooting the swamp, without digging channels which are prohibited, fine, go ahead, but I think it doesn't work.
On the eastern side of Greater Kampala lies the Luzira Portbell Industrial Area. Industries like Uganda breweries and Uganda distilleries, together with the mushrooming flower gardens on the northern shores of Lake Victoria, still flash memories of suspicion to the surrounding community. This long pipe pumps thousands of cubic liters of industrial effluent from this brewery industry at Portbell, some of which escapes untreated. Concrete walls have been erected here to guard against the curiosity of some people. The National Environment Management Authority, NEMA, is concerned that a lot of organic material is being poured into the water from numerous polluting activities around the city, but feels it's a little too early to point fingers. But to the water people, purification costs are overstretching.
It is a very unsightly thing to look at, and nobody would want to get to this water and drink it directly, even cook it, because they are not very sure of the source of this product.
We have to treat water to national standards, and we cannot supply water with algae, so we have to remove it. There are so many other things implied, because when you have algae, then you find that even our filters are overloaded, then we have less filter runs. You have to be cleaning them more frequently. You are using treated water to clean them, that's a cost. You are even producing less water than if these filters were working and you did not have to interrupt.
All these people, whether they are manufacturing plastics or batteries or whatever, they just discharge the effluent into the environment. I'll be very surprised to find any. I've visited fish plants, I've visited all that. Here in Kampala, there's industrial undertakings, all these things, garages, these people who store oil and all that. Nobody treats waste. Nobody has a waste treatment plant.
The best is to appeal to the industrialists to understand the future of the people of Uganda and know that when they produce, they should not go beyond the regulated levels of wastewater or wastewater going into the environment, so that they can produce and leave environment, habitable for the future generations.
Mining, if done properly, is a vital aspect of development. The Kilembe copper mines that date back to the colonial times had a devastating effect on the land resource in the area. The tunnels that were sank into the foothills of Mount Rwenzori have been left bare, causing silting and dumping problems to the fragile ecological systems. This blue stream here every day pumps millions of oxidized copper into the Nyamwamba Lake George system, affecting the plant and animal biodiversity there. And for a long time now, tons and tons of cobalt and other mineral-containing rocks have found their way into Lake George, drifting along the river Nyamwamba. Lake George wetland system forms the first Ramsar site to be gazetted in Uganda. Biodiversity here remains uncertain, with the Kilembe mines soon resuming activity.
We would like it to resume, but to resume as a new operation that is environmental consciousness, that is technologically advanced to carry out that kind of mining in a sensitive area like that, so that in the end we have both. We have sustainable mining and we also protect the environment.
That those who are coming, if they happen to come, they must, that's the first priority. This thing that any company which comes, if I'm still here, the environment should be the first priority.
Indeed.
Yeah, if you don't have that in your program, out.
Following the improvement of the copper prices on the world market, Kilembe mines could open once again. And as you say, as I have said, it is within the mountains of Rwenzori. Mountains are highly unstable. The mining goes into the mountain, and going into the mountain means that you have to take care of the destabilization underground that it causes. But we also had the mining waste in the form of copper tailings which contain cobalt that was oozing and leaking into the rivers like Nyamwamba, and therefore they became environmental problems. Therefore, if they are going to go into the mountain once again, there will be need for very, very careful, comprehensive assessment of the impact of getting into that mountain and removing the rocks.
Located on the floor of the Western Rift Valley, not far from the slopes of Mount Rwenzori, lies the Hima cement industry, feared for its socio-economic effect on the environment. Established by the government of Uganda and now owned by the French consortium, Lafarge, the coexistence of this cement factory with the people, animals and plants is rapidly deteriorating.
Seminti waliwo ekiseera abatayiika ekiseera ekirala n'ayiika kebenga ekintu ekyanise wabweru ogenda kukyanyulako ojjako wakiri nga hafu ya seminti essubi wali wadde embuzi egenda kulya essubi wano tutulunda mbuzi kyokka ne batatukwatirwa kisani batuga nti kati aba n'abantu engeri tubabonye katubawa amazzi wano tulina ekizibu ky'amazzi bw'ogalabako ogamba mata.
And cross the river. This is the river Dura. Okay. Now this is actually the lease area for the quarry.
Hima cement industry is soon expanding, a process that calls for additional lime and phosphate deposits. The Ugandan government has identified Dura as the industry's new lime site. This new limestone site sits on River Dura, one of the water catchment areas for Lake George. The site is also located along the way for the transmigratory wild animals between Queen Elizabeth National Park and Chibale Forest National Park.
Yeah, there is some movement of elephants here.
For example, this could have been here for example,
this dung here, this dung is less than 1 week.
The mining activities will negatively affect the biodiversity in the area and the general animal behavior. For example, elephants could become agitated and violent and cause harm to people, crops and other properties.
Mining in a protected area is illegal, so there's no way a government department can issue an illegal permit.
But they have done it.
Yes, it's like any activity that is done but is void. So myself, Greenwatch, Nape, and others. We are already in an advanced process of taking the matter to court so that we can challenge the validity of all those, of the actions of all those parties involved.
Illegal maram and sand quarries, wetlands and drainage waterways like Nalukolongo and the navigable channels are now seen by the communities as no man's land and therefore considered alternative solid waste dumping areas. This unfortunate practice by the communities now chokes the major urban waterways, causing flooding and increasing waterborne diseases like cholera, typhoid, dysentery and malaria, threatening millions of lives. Kampala city dwellers generate over 1,000 tons of garbage each day, but half of this is properly disposed of. Problems of illegal disposal methods. To minimize problems of this nature, the City Council of Kampala has contracted a number of companies to dispose of some of the city solid waste materials to her dumping ground in Chitezi. Everything ends up here. At least half of the city garbage accessed by licensed garbage collectors.
The problem is poor solid waste management. So somebody gets a bucket of solid waste and pours it in the road. Somebody, a small restaurant has a heap of garbage behind, which they are not properly disposing of.
Per day we save between 500 tons. Between 500 tons and 600 tons of garbage. Except on Sunday, it reduces. It is like 300 to 400 garbage. Since here is the don't all in Kampala, and I think, I know that it's a half of it which is comes here. The rest is made.
Garbage disposal at Chitezi has some restrictions. For example, officials here will not accept medical waste and paint materials.
We refuse medical waste because medical waste at times it having some substances. Secondly, we accept the medical waste. Some hospitals they can bring here the dead people and fetus. Paint, it has some chemicals, so we can cause this ricket to be on high whatever.
There are more questions than answers regarding the destination of medical waste in and around Kampala. The administration at Mulago says they incinerate their waste, but experts and environmentalists say their incinerators are substandard.
You ask yourself, where is the waste from the hospital? Where is it dumped? It could be in Chitezi or it could be elsewhere, because there is a lot of hospital waste and you don't have a place where it is dumped. They might be dumping it at night, and they could be dumping it either in rivers or in our lakes. So one has to find out. But I know they have the incinerators, but I don't think all the hospital waste is incinerated. Because even these incinerators they say they have, they don't live to the international standards.
This lichet in Chitezi oftentimes escapes the only treatment plant and finds its way into the neighboring swamp, posing great threat to communities around who use this wetland as their only source of water. Water is life. It is a natural resource without which life is impossible. This dear resource is constantly under threat by humans, ironically, who need it the most for survival. All the natural resource abuses seen in this film have direct negative impact on water.
If Uganda has to attain good governance and environmental justice, the people living in this country must change their habits, their behaviors and practices. For instance, people littering the whole places when they are moving in vehicles and taxis. Secondly, those institutions charged with monitoring and managing the environment in this country should do their work without political interference. And lastly, government should set aside 2 important days. One for tree planting, it becomes a national tree planting day. Another one for general cleaning, it becomes National Cleaning Day.
In Uganda, we see a number of areas that have been a priority for us. First of all, we have taken an interest in environmental justice and governance issues. And why is that? Because we feel that the environmental movement here is very much about citizens' participation, about empowering people to understand about the environment, how the environment touches on governance issues and justice issues.
This kind of situation calls for concerted efforts, good governance and a commitment from all stakeholders. Short of that, the Pearl of Africa may never be the same again.
Everybody in Uganda, conservation is the key. The trees for life, the forest for life.